My name is Wegleitner. I'm the principal at Hawthorne, and we're extremely honored to have you in our new region. And before you here, we have District County Supervisor Yogesh, and you'll be hearing from him next.
Thanks everyone for being here. First of all, we want to thank Hawthorne Elementary School. We also want to welcome everyone here to District 6. This is, I'm the County Board Supervisor in this district, and it's great that we have a public school and a public forum where we can connect with the community. So the purpose of tonight is a community meeting and listening session. We have your elected officials here. We also have subject matter experts here. We have Colonel Greco who came from Vermont, who knows quite a bit about this issue and will be helping to not only educate us, but will also be sharing the experiences that a similar community had with the issue that we're grappling with now. I want to introduce some of the elected officials who are here. They're going to be speaking briefly tonight as well. We have Alders, Syed, Abbas. We have Alder Marsha, Rummel, who is also we have a colleague on the board, County Board Supervisor Heidi Wegleitner. And someone who needs no introduction, Assembly Rep. Dane. So I just want to run through some of the logistics that we have tonight. First off, if you need interpretive services, we have interpretive services in both Spanish and Hmong. Thanks to Patricio, to Pao, and to Dia. They're right here over here. If you need interpretive services, you can either get a headset or you can sit by them and you can get that interpretation. So what we're going to do is the elected officials are going to briefly address you here, and then we're going to give the floor to Colonel Greco, who's going to give us a little bit more of a presentation. After that, what we're going to do is we're going to ask anybody who has either public comment or a question that they'd like to ask to an elected official to line up here on the left, and then we'll have you come and we'll have you face the audience and speak in front of the mic. We're going to ask you to limit your comments to 2 minutes since we have such a great turnout here. We want to make sure that we get to listen to everybody. So thanks everyone for being here, and I'm going to be facilitating this evening. If you need any help or you need anything, please come to me. We also have Andy over here, who is a superstar helper who has helped organize a lot of logistics here, so we're thankful for that. So without further ado, we're going to start off with Alder Marsha.
Hi everybody. It's kind of funny, I'm Yogesh over here in District 6. That's his county board. You're actually in District 15, and all the officers out of town, you would be here with us. Hit your own layers of government all clear. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming. We're cutting down to the wire as far as Friday the 27th, the last day to make public comments. I urge you all, if you haven't done so already, I hope there's forms over there. Otherwise, there's online forms that you can do. It's really important, even if you say, what about my property values, or what about the kids? Even if you don't go deep and intellectual, that's okay. Just weigh in if you don't want it, or if you want it, that's we just need, they're going to take account, and it's important that you say something, weigh in. And because we do make a difference. It's a federal legal process, environmental impact statement, they do take our comments, so it's important that we speak up. And use the infected neighborhood, so you hopefully will favor it more. And I have learned a whole lot about F-35s, about nuclear weapons, about sound maps, and much more. But I'm here to hear me, but I'm here to answer questions if you have them later. And again, I want to thank everyone for coming.
Next, Alder Syed, Abbas is going to introduce himself.
I'm Alder on the north side of the district, which is District 12. The District 12 starts from First Street. You heard about First Street Public Market, East High School, goes all the way up to Airport. Through at the County Airport, it is in District 12, and it's over at the District 1. From once the EIS report came out, I did a lot of, personally, I did a lot of investigation. I really appreciate all the constituents sending me email and expressing their concern. It's very important for officials to know how you're feeling, what type of struggles you're having. And for me, I also reach out to constituents after the city finished their analysis. And the one interesting thing I noticed between city and EIS report, so EIS report mentioned about 132 household incompatible. The city report actually mentioned a higher number. And the Packer Avenue, the manufactured homes over there, 312 units will be incompatible. So the impact is actually greater than it's smaller. And I'm really thankful and humbled to see so many people get together. We do all the best when we all get together, work together, and achieve goals together for the community. And that's why I am here today. And I will stay here with you guys. Please, if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email. If I have more than 1,000+ emails, I'm still going through that. So it will take me a little time to get back, but trust me, I can read those emails. So please reach out to me. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you all very much. For anybody who came in late, we do have Mani and Spanish interpretive services on the web. We want to thank Alder Bedard and the Common Counsel's office for facilitating that and making that happen. Up next, we're going to introduce Heidi, County Board Supervisor.
So I represent District 2, which is the north part of the Isthmus, includes Emerson neighborhoods and part of Beacon Park, Lapa, Mansion Hill. And I am, really concerned about the proposed F-35 bed down here, and I was one of 15 supervisors that signed on to a letter last Thursday night to specifically and firmly oppose the F-35 bed down here. Also signed on to that, and we were led by Supervisor Supervisor as well. And I have to say that the issue that was first and foremost on our minds is the environmental racism as documented in the draft environmental impact statement. And the county board works a lot and talks a lot about racial equity and social justice. And on every county board agenda, we have questions at the top that say who benefits, who's burdened, and whose voices are not being heard. And so when we think about huge policy decisions and federal decisions that can come down to Madison and have a huge impact on the quality of life of vulnerable populations, disproportionately negatively impacting communities of color, children, people with low incomes, it's really important that we think about all the planned harms that could inflict, and we stand up firmly to reject that proposal. So that's why I'm here to learn more from Greco and all of us today. So thanks a lot for being here, and I look forward to your comments.
Up next is our State Assembly Rep for this district, Chris Taylor.
To us. We feel this really personally because this is our community, these are our friends and neighbors who we love, and we want to create communities of equity, of fairness, of justice. And this proposal is really the antithesis of that. I have to tell you, when I read it, I really didn't need much more to say, no, this is not what we want in our community. You look at the impacts on communities of color, on low-income people, but children as well, you all. There are 10 public schools The area is a zone of fire. The area where the loudest noise is going to be, including this elementary school. And this school and so many schools that are going to be impacted are serving our children. They're serving communities of color. They're serving kids who have English as a second language. They're serving challenging, economically challenged households. And we know we struggle with these inequities already. Why on earth would we get behind a proposal that exacerbates inequality, not heals it, not remedies it? So I am just standing in solidarity with you and learning every single day. We're really, really so lucky to have Colonel Greco here with us, who will be introduced. We can learn a lot from what happened in Burlington, and you're going to hear a lot tonight that's going to even raise more concerns. The final thing I want to say is, you know what, our voices matter. I don't care what the paper prints or what the Chamber of Commerce says. Our voices matter. We are powerful. And look at your names happening tonight of how communities just like ours came together and said no. The people stood up and said no, and they were successful. So don't let anyone tell you can't do it, or oh, it's already done, done decision. No, that's what people say to those who they want to shut up and they want them to sit down. And that's not what we're doing here tonight.
So we are very lucky to have Colonel Greco here all the way from Vermont. Not only is she an expert in terms of military operations, but also served on Vermont City Council. So she has a lot of experiences that she can really help inform us here. And she's going to be giving a presentation. Following the presentation, we're going to have the public comment period, and I'll explain a little bit more about that after the presentation. So without further ado, here's Colonel Greco.
You almost look like a Vermont audience without the Ben & Jerry's ice cream, because Ben is a very strong ally with us in opposing the F-35, and every forum we had, he would bring Ben & Jerry's ice cream. So if I had only known, I would have asked him to come and get some B&J's for you all too. So let me start to pick up on what Chris just said about the power of people. She is absolutely correct. We'll talk about who they are in a second, want to make you feel afraid and feel powerless. And the fear that they caused in Vermont caused many people to automatically back this weapon system. The fear that they were engendering was multiple. One was national defense. That we have to have this weapon system for national defense. Oh my God, this thing can't do anything against the real threats that we're facing right now. Then there was the fear about the Guard going away. That if they didn't get this weapon system, our Air Guard would fold up tents and go home. They even made it so nuts that not only did the Air Guard close, but the Army Guard would close and the whole airport would close. So many people reacted, oh my God, we got to keep the airport there, but we have to support them. And then they used the whole issue of patriotism. And they equated the people, the women and men in uniform, with the plane. So that if you were opposed to the plane, then you were unpatriotic because you did not support our troops. When you put all that together, they did convince very many Vermonters, most of whom lived nowhere near the noise zone, that it was perfectly fine to put this plane in your neighborhood. And so that's why many Vermonters still to this day do back the F-35 because of those fears that they engendered, that misinformation and that disinformation. So let me give you a little background on how I got involved. So I served 30 years, 29 years, 4 months, and 4 days. Sometimes I round up, sometimes I round down. In the United States Air Force. I was an intelligence officer. I specialized in nuclear weapons, and I also participated participated in a number of international arms control delegations on nuclear weapons. So I know a lot about nuclear weapons. Little did I know that would be brought back to my life this year. So I retired to Vermont, and I was going to city meetings mainly because of overdevelopment and environmental issues. And somebody said, would you like to run for city council? That's what we call it in South Burlington, Vermont. I didn't know what it was, so I said yes. And then I got elected, and I don't do much of anything in my life. And then I got elected to the chair of South Burlington City Council. And it was at that time that our environmental impact statement, EIS, came to the citizens of my city. When the residents came to the city council, much like you are doing today and perhaps have done in the past, and said to their elected officials, what are you going to do for us? I had no idea what they were talking about because I had never heard of the F-35 before. When I retired, I really retired. I took off my uniform and didn't want to deal with military matters anymore. So I called our Vermont Air Guard, and so colonel to colonel, and they assured me that there was nothing to see here. People were just, making up stories. They're getting it's a little noise. Come on, get over it. I lived on Air Force bases for many years of my career. I lived next to jets. I actually like jet noise, personally. Now I know, though, that it hurts me. I mean, it physically hurts me. I can't tell it, but it does. It's like secondhand smoke. We'll go into that later. Anyway. So the guard told me the noise will not be bad. In fact, it might even be quieter than the F-16s. And I believe them. I had no reason not to believe them. Just like I think many of your politicians are being assured by your guard, I hope they're not like our guard, or your senior elected officials, or your business community, that there's nothing to worry about here. So I believe them. And then the EIS came out, and I read it. Many people, ours was, well, we had multiple volumes, 3 versions, about 6,000 pages, weighed 6 pounds. I would have brought it out here, but too heavy. But I read it. And in it was clear what the guard had told me was wrong. Not only was it not going to be quieter, it was going to be 4 times louder. All right, so noise is one thing. I had no idea really what noise was about. By the way, the definition of noise is unwanted sound. I learned this from the EIS. I mean, it's a really good read. If you ever learn some stuff about noise and what noise does and how you measure noise and all that, it's a fascinating treatise on that. But in there, noise was obviously something you hear, but what it does into human beings, to their health, to their property values, to the environment, to the economy, that's the real negative part of the F-35. Yes, it's loud. Yes, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you can go deaf. It depends on where you are. The smaller you are, the more damaging it will do to you. So the Air Force cited in studies done by the World Health Organization, peer-reviewed studies that show overwhelmingly that the noise produced by weapon systems such as the F-35 causes significant harm to human beings. They didn't say this, but I just read an article on the plane coming here, that they're doing more and more studies, and I actually came to this conclusion as I was reading this. Noise is the new nicotine. Because just like years ago, many of us said, smoke doesn't bother me, secondhand smoke doesn't bother me, smokers said it doesn't bother me, right? It did. They didn't know it. I mean, how do you know that your liver is being affected or your heart's being affected? Or your lungs are being affected? You don't know until you start exhibiting symptoms. Well, that's what they were talking about, noise. It's vibrations that affect our internal organs. So while I was feeling the rush of jet engines when I was stationed at Udor in Thailand and F-4s were taking off and thinking that was thrilling, I didn't know it was actually damaging my organs. And if you're a child or an infant or anybody with a compromised immune system, it has more effect. So the health effect is overwhelming. And the fact that you have schools in that noise zone, and we have schools in that noise zone, is very concerning if you love your children. In addition to the health effects, it has cognitive effects on children. And they've done studies about children who live around airports, and they find that the noise of the aircraft can cause lifelong learning impairment. Some children, these are all in the studies that the Air Force provided, I just looked them up and read them. Some children, when they move away from airports, are able to recover. Some children never recover. So you have health impacts, you have cognitive impairment. From a health standpoint alone and a human safety standpoint, that should be enough. You don't even have to know about the rest of it, but there's more, right? The thing that got me most of all was the safety issue, because now we're talking about lives being lost. So the Air Force had to, and by the way, the Air Force does this because they are required by law to do it. They do not do it out of the goodness of their heart. So there's an Environmental Policy Act, National Environmental Policy Act, which is sometimes as NEPA, that was set in place years ago. So when any federal entity is about to do something that has a significant impact on the environment, they are required by law to produce a document like the Environmental Impact Statement that assesses 15 different areas and what the impact of their proposal will be on those areas, right? So human health, the world environment, economic issues, impact on people of color, they call them minorities, and people of low income, et cetera, et cetera. They even have a whole part on animals. The EIS gave more information on an animal than it did on children in some cases, but anyway, but one of the things they have to do is assess it from a safety perspective. So how safe is this aircraft? So that's the part that just stopped me in my tracks. So it said the F-35, and it's many years later now, our EIS came out in 2012, right? But it said, so we have to tell you how safe it is. I'm politicizing this, okay? I have to tell you how safe it is. We don't know. It's too new, so it has no safety record. So we can't tell you how safe it's going to be. But what we'll tell you is how safe we think it's going to be based on the aircraft it is most comparable to. And the aircraft they picked that was most comparable to the F-35 is an aircraft called the F-22. Anybody know about the F-22? Probably not. It's the most unsafe aircraft the Air Force is flying. Some of you may remember this. Maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer, 2 Air Guard pilots that flew the F-22 went on 60 Minutes because the plane was crashing and a few pilots had died. And they were trying to get the Air Force's attention that something is wrong with this plane. And the Air Force ignored them, and they got to the point where they went to 60 Minutes. So that's the aircraft that the Air Force told us we could expect our F-35 to be comparable to. Okay, then it said, okay, so the F-35 is a new aircraft, immature sometimes is the word they use. And new and immature aircraft crash more in their beginning years, right? That's just what happens. And they gave charts to show how frequently they crash in their beginning years. So we saw how the FAA did it all. In fact, we did it. We estimated how many times the F-35 was going to crash in Burlington if it's like the F-22, right? And then it said, okay, and where they normally crash, although they can fall out of the sky, but they normally crash on takeoff and landing. And so we have one runway. Y'all have one runway. At the end of one of our runways is a little town called Winooski of 5,000 people. Winooski was a city that took in a lot of refugees that are overwhelmingly Africans and people from countries, that war-torn countries, and they are dead center, right at the end of the runway. At the other end of the runway is a city called Williston. On either sides of the runway is South Burlington. That's where I live. I don't live near the airport, but the runway runs right through South Burlington. Okay. So that didn't sound like a good idea. A few years ago, an F-35 burst into flames as it was taking off on Eglin Air Force's base in Florida's runway. Now, our runway is 8,000 feet. Yours is about 9,000 feet. Eglin's, I think, is about 12,000 feet-ish, right? So the plane was taxiing for takeoff. It caught fire. The pilot, he ejected safely, and then he made a statement after that that said he had enough runway to be able to stop the plane in order to get out. I mention that because the shorter your runway, the less options the pilot has if she or he runs into trouble. So because that was a long runway at England, the pilot was able to stop the plane. We tried to find out at what point along their runway he stopped the plane. Because if it had been over 8,319 feet, and had it been in Vermont, it would have been over the city of Winooski. So I was concerned about the whole safety impact of it. Then there was the whole property value. So the Air Force put out, you're thinking about economics, is this good for the people that live around the airport? What will happen to your property values? Well, they had a number of studies. Some of the studies said that houses that are around noisy airports lose value. Now they showed other studies that said there was no loss, but nonetheless, you look around airports. All right, is that where the big fat cats live? Not usually. So all of those reasons gave me enough reason as a reader to say this does not belong in the Burlington, Vermont area. I naively thought that my colleagues, my elected officials, in the state, the county, and the federal level, would also inform themselves and come to that same conclusion. You don't have to extrapolate. Well, you got to look at the data. They did not. What they did, and I don't know if your elected officials did this, certainly not the ones up here, but they came out in support of the F-35 before the EIS was released. So they made their assessment and they pledged allegiance to this weapon system before they learned the information about it. And then many of them, I think, found themselves in a bind because they basically were maybe fell for what I did. The guard told them, somebody else told them everything would be fine, so they said, we're fine. They wrote statements, passed resolutions, and then the information came out and yet none of them reversed their position. Now they had the information. We kept giving them face-saving ways. What they're going to do is, did you know this? If you didn't, now you do. Now you think you want to make that same choice. That didn't work. Right? So we fought, much like we were doing. We had assemblies like this. We had a panel of doctors one time that focused specifically on the impact of children. We had public assemblies where we invited our senior elected officials. Not only did they not show up, they never really RSVP'd. We had letter writing campaigns. We did marches down the main street in Vermont. We sent postcards. We did just about everything. Week before last, I got arrested because our Senator Pat Leahy, and our other Senator Bernie Sanders, are both strongly behind the F-35. That's bad enough. Yeah, Bernie. That's bad enough. Neither of these two guys, in the 8 years I have been fighting this, has ever met with anybody who is against the F-35. Never. We have repeatedly asked for meetings, one-on-one, they didn't want to lose face, in a group, in a public assembly, in their office. No, they have never spoken to anybody about our concerns about the F-35. That is shameful. So a week before last, we went 2 by 2 to Senator Pat Leahy's office, asking him at this point, well, we sort of demanded that he sign this list, which is to tell the Air Force to delay sending it until 6 things have been addressed, many of which you also should want to have addressed. Right? And we didn't leave. So we waited in his waiting room. And then they closed and we didn't leave. So they had to call the cops. Right? So we had... just about time to do that. And then we had people who were trapped in the noise zone. They went the next day, a mother and her daughter who was in a wheelchair. Then we had 2 members of our faith community, our local clergy go. Then we had some members of our city council went, and then we had 2 doctors go. So 2 by 2, every day they went to Senator Leahy's office, and 6 of us ended up getting arrested. Then he locked his doors. We couldn't wait this waiting room, so. Right. Senator Leahy, let's talk about Senator Leahy, because I believe your folks are now working with Senator Leahy, because I just was reading a little statement that he put out that I think you're going to be hearing about. You're going to disseminate it, so you don't have to worry, things will be okay. All right, Senator Leahy, contact the Air Force, and everything will be just fine. So, I was contacted early on by a whistleblower who, I can't tell you who it is, right? Because this person did not ask for whistleblower protection before they contacted me, right? So they're in great jeopardy should their identity become aware. But this person told me that there was all kinds of stuff going on behind the scenes to rig the system. Senator Leahy was integral to that. He pressured the Air Force. He tried to get them to falsify information, to change charts, to change graphs. He tried to get them to change the, I'm not going to say this now. So there is a policy, and you've heard about the 65 decibel DNL, right? So the 65 decibel DNL does not mean 65 decibels is what you're going to hear. You're not going to hear 65 decibels. That is an average from a period of total quiet to the 118, 120 decibels you will hear when the F-35 takes off, right? So that's an average, right? But what that represents is very important, because if your homes are in that zone, which is has agreed upon by 5 different federal agencies, you could be eligible for federal money to help you with the noise. There's 2 ways they can help you. I'll tell you how they helped us. So we had thousands of homes that were in the noise of the F-16. So they applied, they were the 65 decibel or greater. So the airport applied to the FAA to get money, got money. They bought 200 homes and they destroyed them. So they bought out, these are all affordable houses, looks a lot like your neighborhoods. I've been driving around, and I see your little neighborhoods and they look a lot like ours used to look. We lost neighborhoods. That's how they helped us. So people got value for their property. They got market value, because that's what the FAA will give you, but their homes were gone. And many of these people, their house was their home. It wasn't just an edifice, right? So they helped us that way. They destroyed a bunch of neighborhoods. And that, those houses now are no longer subject to the 65 DNL. Guess what? The houses in the blocks right next to them now were in the 65 decibel area, because the houses in front were a buffer.
Right.
The buffer was now gone, and now they opened up a whole other area of 65 decibel homes. Then the airport goes, well, holy crap, what are you going to do now? You can't take down all these homes. All right, so the FAA came in and told us something you will not hear. I'll tell you this: you cannot mitigate noise. The only way to mitigate noise is to buy the houses and destroy them. Because being in a 65 decibel zone means it is unsuitable for residential use. So you have to take them down. So if you're in that 65 decibel, right, that's not suitable for residential use. Oh, and by the way, this is back to what Senator Leahy tried to get the Air Force to change. HUD and the VA are not guaranteed to give any federal mortgage assistance or federal insurance if your house is in the 65 decibel DNL. So that's another little catch-22. Senator Leahy didn't like that, and and I'll tell you how we know about this, but he tried to get the Air Force to change the statement. They refused. They said, that's what HUD said. That's what the VA said. So there's a lot about this 65 DNL. Okay, let me tell you the second thing they're now talking about doing, because now the first 2 F-35s arrived last week.
Yep.
So because the Air Force said, and I can give you the citations, and because the FAA said you cannot mitigate the noise of the F-35, the only way to do it is to buy the houses and tear them down, you can't soundproof. That will not mitigate the noise if you ever go outside your house or open a window or a door, or want to spend time with kids playing in the yard, right? As long as you're inside your house with doors and windows closed, you might be able to mitigate some, depends how close you are. You can never mitigate the outdoors. Okay, so because the Air Force decided they probably didn't want to take out all the houses in South Burlington and Winooski and so forth, they are intending to apply for federal money for soundproofing. This is how it's going to go. So the F-35s are arriving now. They're going to, you ever heard the story of the frog in the boiling water? Okay, so 2 arrive now. Next month, another 2 are going to arrive. Next month, another 2 are going to arrive until we're boiled to death and they're all here. Right? So after they're here for about a year, then they're going to do another sound assessment to see how bad it really is. Because the EIS, by the way, is a best case estimate, not a worst case, a best case. And it's an estimate. And what they said is, we're just telling you what we think it's going to be. It's a best case, it'll probably be worse. And after it's there, we're going to come down, and then we're going to really measure how bad it is. Okay, so once the F-35 is with us for a year, then they're going to find out how loud it really is. And then the airport may apply for FAA dollars, right? That's the process, it takes a while. If the federal government is still in business by that time, and they have money, and the FAA has it, then they will give it to us, right? But not all of it. We have to have a match. Right now, the Air Force told us that we have 2,963 homes in the 65 decibel DNL. So, if they want to insulate all 2,963 homes, you know how long it's going to take? 20 years. Because they can't do it all at once. We're Vermont. We just have a handful of contractors who probably have second jobs, all right? So they can only afford monetarily and labor to insulate only a certain portion. So 20 years, well actually 22 years from now, they're right, all of the homes will finally be soundproof. So I'm just telling you that in case they tell you, don't worry, we'll soundproof your homes, right? Okay, I don't know, I rambled on a lot. What else can I tell you that, oh, yes. That's the power of the people. Okay, so you have the power. All right, they want you to think you don't. You do. The Air Force looks very closely at all of your comments. It's not a vote, but they tally them all. They will report them to you. They'll say we received, in our case, they received like 1,100 comments. 80% of them were against the basing of the F-35. Right? They're going to do the same thing for you because they are really, the Air Force really wants to be a good neighbor. I say that, sort of believe in it. They would dearly like to go where people want them. If there is a choice, and they have lots of choices. When they were looking at us, people were making it, my God, if it doesn't go to Vermont, where are they going to put it? And one of the other 203 pieces that are available is where they're going to put it. So it's not here or nowhere. There are plenty of places for it. So anyway, so they look at your comments, right? And we read about them looking at our comments, right? But we know they were paying very close attention, and they were saying over and over again, they don't want it. Why are we going there if the people don't want it? Right? So, we actually convinced the Air Force not to base it in Burlington. The reason we know that is because we sued the Air Force. We lost, but as a result of that lawsuit, all of their internal documents had to be revealed. It's called the administrative record. They never would have guessed that we were going to be reading their emails long after the fact. Now, there were over 68,000 entries that we read. A band of 11 women went through all of those. We did word searches. And that's where we read a lot of stuff. Hundreds of pages of redacted, so the real juicy stuff we never got, right? But there was plenty of stuff there. And that's where we read that we had convinced the Air Force. In fact, we saw a record of decision. That's what they'll do at the very end of this process. They're going to write something called a record of decision. They're going to say, we picked base A for these reasons. So we read a record of decision for McIntyre Air Guard Base in South Carolina. Before that, they said we cannot. These people are the basing experts in the Air Force. They're the ones that look at all the data, look at the environmental impacts, look at the operational aspects, and look at the comments. They put all that together, and they said, we cannot support Burlington. It does not belong there. It has too many impacts on the people. It's not good for the environment, not good operationally. The people don't want us. We are recommending you, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, that's the 4-star in charge of the Air Force, select McIntyre in South Carolina. We read that. We had succeeded. And then Senator Leahy called the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. We read that too. And said, I want it in Burlington. So Congress pulls the purse strings for all military, for anything the military does. Any senator that wants or doesn't want something from the military will always get it. So Leahy called and said, I want it. 2 weeks later, they had a record decision selecting Burlington. So we were successful, but we weren't the only ones that were successful. So we did some research. And I came up with 5 places around the United States where citizens were successful, or states were successful in reversing a military basing decision. And I'm going to send it, one of your reporters asked me for it, but I'll send it to everybody so you can look at it. So they were in North Carolina, Virginia, Florida, Alaska, and another base that I keep forgetting, right? So in one state, this was in Alaska, the senator didn't want the Air Force to put some F-16s, move them from one base to another to rebase them. I think it was Murkowski. And so she said to the Air Force, I don't want this. Guess what? Air Force didn't move the F-16s to the other base, kept them where they were, even though the Air Force wanted to do it. In England Air Force Base in Florida, there's a little town called Valparaiso. So the mayor of that town, Mayor Arnold, who has since passed away, sued the Air Force on behalf of his people, and he won. The Air Force settled, paid all their legal expenses, and then they changed the basing. It is a little bit different in England because they did 2 runways, and they just wanted them to use the other runway that didn't overfly Valparaiso. Believe it or not, there was a lawsuit for the Air Force to do that, but they did. And then they ended up removing half of the F-35s from England, and they moved them someplace else. I believe it was the Marines in North Carolina. They wanted to put a base in, and I believe it was one of the Marine Growlers, I believe. They were going to base it there, and the grassroots coalition formed. I think they filed a lawsuit, or were about to file a lawsuit, and the Marines dropped the basing plan. And it also happened in Norfolk, too, and I forget which aircraft that was. I know that must have been asked that, but I didn't send it to you. But they were successful in blocking the basing there. So I found at least 5 examples of wrapping up this. Okay, so you got the power, right? Other people were able to do it. You can do it too. So use your voices. We have been told the sound of a fighter bomber is the sound of freedom. The sound, the noise of a fighter bomber is de facto the noise of war. Your voices are the sound of freedom.
Thank you. My name is Tom Rummel. I've been a resident of Madison for 72 years. Got a lot of guests over those years. How many people here have heard an F-35? Raise your hand if you've heard an F-35. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. When I live in Phoenix, Arizona, part of the year, and they're stationed like Luke Air Force Base, about 5 miles from our home. And I've been living with them now for about 5 years. And when I came back here and I wanted to describe them to people, how do you describe the sound? So I'm going to describe it. I want you to let me know if you sort of agree. I can only describe it as thunderously, deafeningly loud. If you think the F-16s are loud, it's a joke. It's like a Honda 350 driving down the street is an F-16. And a Harley Davidson with all the sound pipes taken off is like an F-35. It's unbelievable. And my wife is an audiologist, and she said people are going to go deaf. And we talked about the dangers to children. I think children and adults are going to go into fight or flight when they go by. And our cells themselves don't know anything about fight or flight, but they go into fight or flight. And that's why it's bad for your health. So children are going to be flying, they're going to be psychologically affected. And just believe me, they will not bring an F-35 here before this decision is made. Because if they did, this place would be overflowing and every school in the city would be overflowing. And it's going to affect the whole city, not just that.
Hi everyone, all power to the people. My name is Brandy Grayson, founder and CEO of Urban Triage for the People by the People, organization grounded in education, empowerment, and action. I am also a resident of the north side of Madison. I am less than half a mile from a military base and an airport. I suffer from severe respiratory issues. I was just in the hospital last week in ICU because of my asthma. I also provide treatment foster care to children with high emotional behavior issues, including autism, Asperger's, auditory sensory things. And this conversation has been founded and framed around the disproportionate negative impact of low-income families and marginalized and vulnerable families. And yet, I don't see the people that say they represent those folks in this space. I am so happy that you guys are here, but there's a lot of disconnect. And I'm not sure how to articulate how emotional this has been for me, finding out the impact, like the real life impact on our bodies, on our thyroid, which controls any and everything in our bodies, right? And on our children's development, cognitive, mentally, physically, biologically. I just can't wrap my head around how anyone, including our mayor, could vote in any direction that's in opposition of the children and the families that are the most vulnerable. I cannot deal with my anger, right? Because I know some people know me as an angry black woman, and I delightfully walk in that. But I want to be able to express the anxiety that comes along with what's happening, and that we have Dane County Common Council half and half split on whether or not that our children and our families deserve protection. And to me, that's a telltale sign of how we got here as a nation. How we got a Trump, right? How we consistently invest and profit over people, how we consistently invest in lobbyists and capitalists. I mean, we all like money, we all want profit, we all need to eat, but somewhere, somehow, we have to figure out how to draw the line between capital and humanity. And I don't want to call people names. I don't want to say these folks are evil. I don't want to call anyone evil, but this is some evil shit. Yeah. And I just want to thank you for coming. Thank you for real. I had a quick conversation with Zach Brandon, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, the mob himself, right? I believe in business, I believe in capital, I believe in investment, so I'm not here to say down with the commerce or anything like that. But when you have people who control what's the policy and what happens in our community based on profit, then there's automatically a conflict of interest, right? And I had a conversation with him and he said, we were very transparent. We reached out to every media outlet. We called on community engagement. We did all these things. And I'm like, yeah, but I live like right next door. And I never heard think Brenda and Amelia contacted me, and David Hart from the church, the pastor at the church down the street from my house, said, have you heard of this? And I'm like, no. And then he explains it, I'm like, what? But then I'm in the middle of other people's personal crises, right? Advocating for people, so I wasn't able to get right on it. But then when it started breaking down, I'm like, they gonna kill me. Y'all, I will die. If we allow these F-35s to come into our neighborhoods, I will die. The children that I care for will be impacted. You know that around the military base is nothing but children? Nothing but children, vulnerable children. How can we say that we are a city and a state? Because I also just came from our governor's fundraiser, and the whole platform was environmental justice, right? All our conversations are racial disparities, racial inequities, and all of this health disparities, but our words are not matching our action, right? Like, how do we continue to engage in this conversation as if the people, like you and me, are too slow to understand the disconnect? Right? Like, when are people gonna come to my funeral next year and say, she was a great actor? We lost a great one. What are we doing? Right? And I'm just so overwhelmed with all of this. I really am. I just don't even know how to hold it. And I just hope this is one of those things in our community where we can look outside and move outside of class, jobs, positions, titles, influence, race, religion, culture, and all of that, and understand that humanity starts with us fighting this and fighting it hard and not remaining silent, not one little bit, and holding all our aldermen accountable. Because if you voted against this or you voted in any way that does not represent the people, you need to go. This is a woman that I voted for. This is a woman I campaigned for. This is a woman that ran her platform on racial disparities and equities, right? And she gave us great hope, just like Obama. And she's only been in office for 5 months and she's disappointed a couple times. But yet I still will rock beside her because she's the only person, the mayor in the last decade or more, you know, that dude, that even engaged people like myself. So I will give her respect, and I will respect her for the letter she released as it relates to the investigation about the 17-year-old boy beat by Madison police. But what that does not negate the side she stood on when she tilted that resolution to the other side. It's not acceptable, and I hope that you guys stand on that and put her on notice that there will be another election cycle, right?
My name is Flores. Not only do I represent myself, I represent my mother, who's a homeowner on Williamson Street, Sharon Kilfoy. I represent my sister, who's a homeowner right here in Blooming Grove off of Fair Oaks. I represent my 5-year-old nephew, my 10-year-old son, my 21-year-old daughter. We are in extreme opposition. The only reason that I was born here in Madison is because it was a sanctuary city. That is why my mother came here to go to the university, was because this is where resistors of war could come and find sanctuary. And so now to have a mayor and to have city council members to support war machines that are detrimentally harmful to our community is really sad. It's sad to have to tell my 10-year-old what's going on and why we're all coming here. The fact that this, not only do I represent my family, but I represent the dozens, the hundreds of Latina mothers who could not be here tonight. I represent the low-income mothers who are working, who can't be here tonight. The people who are going to be most impacted by these choices are people who cannot afford to live elsewhere. People who are forced to live in Truex, people who are forced to live in Packers, townhomes and apartments. Right now, I'm lucky that I live off of Williamson Street, but our health is still put in detriment there because of the coal being burned, because of the trains coming through with who knows what. that could explode at any moment. And now we're thinking about putting more machines here that are, what was it, 3 to 4 times more likely to explode than the F-15s that could possibly crash and kill us? What price? What price are we willing to pay to put our lives and our loved ones in harm, in jeopardy? So, thank you for being here, everybody.
I'm Mary Jo Alders. Anybody from next door here? Yeah, next door. Okay, I'm with Six Guys, and we have postcards. If anybody wants to fill out something, a question or comment that they want to make, we have the address and postcards. Those of us with these tags, you can find us, and we'll give you a postcard. We'll also have them up at the table, and then we'll mail them out for you. Okay, thank you all for coming tonight.
Hello, my name is Samantha Limantes-Cigar. I'm here as a concerned citizen, resident, in the flight path. I will be directly affected with health. I am also here for my neighbors. I don't need to say what the amazing Randy Grayson already said, or what I'm sure he'll be happy to say. But I'm here for us to all realize that the unrepresented is not here, cannot be here. And that matters. And our city cannot say that we are progressive and we're the ones that we need to care the most of. The most important citizens of Madison are currently going to be hurt by this. I want us all to remember the children, people low income, and everyone. We're a great city, but this won't destroy it. Thank you.
My name is Alan Ruff. I'm a 45-year resident of Madison. I'm also a historian. So I want to make 2 quick historical points. One was that in 1961, just before leaving the White House, Dwight Eisenhower, before handing over the reins to John Kennedy, coined the phrase that we all hear all the time, military-industrial complex. But it was a warning, because if you read that speech, you get beyond the Cold War rhetoric. He's saying beware of that military-industrial complex because it devours everything in its path. It's anti-democratic. It feeds this endless craving for more and more death. All of them. All of them that pay for the senators, that pay for the congressmen, that buy politicians right down to the state and local level, to the chambers of commerce that are invested in that murder, that suck out of social programs, that suck out of children's needs, out of medical care, out of education. Yesterday, in the State Journal, the headline basically read it, I'll paraphrase, it's a done deal. Why would they have that headline? They want us to believe it's a done deal. The second historical note I want to reference is that in the mid-60s, in the first nonviolent civil disobedience act in Madison against the war in Vietnam, several hundred people hiked out from the campus area to Truax Field, to the gates of Truax, and sat down in front of the gates and claimed they weren't going to leave because they were going to arrest, a citizen's arrest of the camp commander. Why do I raise that? Mass civil disobedience, non-violent civil disobedience has to be employed. Legislatures, but in exerting extra parliamentary political pressure, and that's the only thing that will work. Thank you very much.
To make this a Madison button, we probably should have had a picture back. I'm Dean Loomis. I live on Milwaukee Street, right in line with the Rummel built a little porch there. I can sit out on the porch, and I like to see the airlines come. I can wave at it. And whenever I've flown in, I can actually look down and see my house. So I'm kind of on the outskirts of this, so I'm directly involved. I bought the house in 2005, and I like sitting out there watching them, but when the F-16s come, everything stops. You can't hear anything. All right, so that's one thing that clearly, so put me down solidly opposed to this thing. There are several other things that we have to consider here. I'm so sick of hearing how we have to keep these things because of economic development, that we lose if we don't have it. This is not an economic development plan, neither is it a national defense plan. An economic development plan is to use some of that money and put it into a healthcare plan that we all could have, and it take some of that money, put it into affordable housing, and that, the job and stability. Infrastructure repair and the jobs and the stability that would create, there's an economic development. Then take the rest of that money, put it into our schools, and then you've got stability and an economic development plan that everybody can enjoy. I read also something years ago that I've been wanting somebody to check out. I asked Norm from Progressive, maybe some other people can check, maybe our Colonel friend knows. But I read something that they keep these planes loud on purpose to increase the psychological terror that they create when you're an enemy. And here are these things coming. You know they're going to drop a bomb on you. They're coming from all over. You're already scared. You're terrorized. As soon as you hear them, these things are supposed to go 6,500 times a year, 17 a day that comes out to. This isn't a national defense plan. This is a terrorist attack. They're going to terrorize you. For so many other reasons that other people mentioned, and there are many more to speak about. We're right, fill out those cards and let's see what happens, and then maybe we've got to do what else is.
Hello, my name is Michael Simons. I live on Refugee Street. The F-16s fly straight over my house, and all conversation stops. It's interesting to hear that maybe there will be some mitigation by insulating your house. Well, you want to live inside a tomb? You can't open the windows. You can't go sit out on your porch. You can't go work out in the garden without this horrible roar. And it's going to get worse. You know, and then I hear there'll be letters to the editor, some people interviewed that say, oh, but this is so important for our defense and our freedom. This is not about defense. The Canadians are going to come down and attack us. You know, this is about preparing the offense to attack other countries. They're doing dry runs. And, you know, we're getting used. You know, our lives are important. And we're put in the same class as the people that will be dropping the bombs on somewhere else. So it's, you know, we're not, we deserve better than that, and, you know, we don't have the luxury of just saying, well, we don't like it, leave it. Well, if you have a house there, are you going to sell that? The value is going to go down and down. Who wants to live in a place like that? You know, and the people that are advocating don't live there, for the most part.
My name is Lila Pine. I have lived in Madison for 52 years and been an activist for longer than that. This is one of the more frightening issues that has come up for me in the last 50-some years. I have 2 points I wanted to discuss. One is, and nobody said this before, so I'm taking a risk. I have voted in the past many times for Tammy Baldwin. I have been hearing from people who spoke to her that she is very solidly in favor of the F-35s. I don't know if she suggested bringing them in here or not, but unless she proves what I'm about to say wrong, I am not going to vote for her again. Martin makes the F-35s, am I right? Yes, and I have been told that Lockheed Martin is a major funder of Tammy Baldwin's campaigns. This is corruption. This isn't just happening, this is corruption. And I am not going to support that, ever. I think we need to be more sophisticated in the future in looking into all of the funders of any, okay, wrap up already. I'll shift to my second point. I do spend half my year, now that I'm retired, my husband and I are both retired, we spend half the year in Tucson, Arizona, and I don't know as much as the gentleman who spends time right in Phoenix, which is right near Luke Air Force Base. But I do know that Luke has, I think now about 80 F-35s and is headed toward a total of getting 144 F-35s, and that the people there who protested from the beginning were called unpatriotic and even referred to, when they really protested hard, as terrorists. And that now they're finding that these planes are taking off and landing much more rapidly, much more frequently than ever before, because there are more and more pilots coming in, not only from across the U.S. Air Force, but other friendly countries' air forces to learn how to fly them there. And that a whole huge section, it's actually, the base is next to Glendale, a suburb, and the whole section to the left, to the west, is now being rezoned as industrial because it can no longer be used for residential housing. I think that's happening.
My name is Ron Schutz. I live on Division Street. Been there for over 35 years. I have a call-in number, and nobody has been asking us more for that number than the Dane County Airport. Just to share with you, I have tinnitus, ringing of the ears, from a military for Marsha Burlington. So I just want to introduce the airport number. I'm a permanent tenant on the city of Madison's chart. We're using that number. They hold various orders every part-time through the year. I've attended 24 of those, just to let them know. Do not appreciate any frustrating of the military aircraft running over our roads.
Hi, my name is Kim Gasper-Raybuck. I'm a resident here well, I'm actually in Monona. My son lives in Madison. And I know a lot of you, and then there are a lot of you that I don't know. I notice a lot of people are kind of my age. And I think that we need to take that into consideration and start thinking about what it is we're going to need to do to make this city safe, not just for ourselves, not just for our children, but for a lot of us, for our grandchildren, right? We're going to make this country safe, not just for ourselves, our children, but our grandchildren. What are we going to do about making this world safe? Most of us were on a demonstration yesterday talking about what we're going to do to make the world inhabitable. Inhabitable. It was yesterday or the day before yesterday. This is a $1 trillion project. The F-35 is a 60-year, $1 trillion project. Each one of these costs $89.2 million for the aircraft, engine, and fees. $89.2 million per machine. How much are any of us worth? How much are we worth? Maybe we have a car. My car is worth $10,000. I owe $8,000 on my $10,000 car. My rent is $1,500 a month. I can't afford it. You know, we really need to say, I'm sorry, I see your 30 seconds. I'm sorry, I went on and on. I wanted to quickly say, Rogers is a school for children with autism. My son has autism. Children at Rogers will not be able to stay. That school will have to close. Children can't do that. Those are children with autism. No children should be in this environment. We don't want any of our children to be in this environment. It's going to take more than Tammy Baldwin. It's going to take more than the new mayor. Unfortunately, it's going to take more than Bernie Sanders, because they have them in Burlington. They put them in on Thursday. It's going to take us being very serious and deliberate about looking into real action, coming together, civil non-disobedience. I've never done it. I'm up for it. Civil These children have asthma. Brady Grayson's got asthma. Her children have asthma. We really need to fight to change. And if that means we get active and don't count on, not meaning to point at you, don't count on politicians with money and corporations, then it's going to be up to us. We need to start doing it.
My name is Terry Cohn. I've lived for 42 years in the 6th District. And I do not live in 65 DNL, but the F-16s fly over my home, and it's loud. And I don't know what the F-35s will sound like. I'm not here to talk about any personal or other reasons. I've been to every public meeting since Marsha first had one at the East Side Community Center way over a year ago. And I want to thank everyone who's spoken so eloquently on the many reasons to oppose the F-35s. But I had two concerns that the Colonel brought up, both this afternoon at a press conference and specifically tonight. And so I want to challenge all of us to think about this. First of all, we have two senators who support the F-35s. Lila, you took the words out of my mouth and you spilled the beans about Tammy. I've gotten a letter. She supports it, and she's very grateful to hear about our concerns, but she supports the F-35s. Ron Johnson, I haven't written. So I want to know how we deal. I want us to brainstorm. I want us to figure out how we deal with our two most influential politicians who can say up or down. The second thing, was you mentioned public support and hearing it. At the Alliance Center, there were a lot of blue caps, there were a lot of stickers. There were a lot of people not from Madison at that meeting. Those are the voices that I think the EIS and the Air Force are going to hear from. How do we deal with that? So the people that aren't here, can we find them? Can we get some kind of input from them? But those are two really huge concerns of mine, and I just want us all to think together and pay attention to whatever social media we're going to use to help us figure those two concerns out.
My name is Joe Weinberg. In 1970, I turned 18, living history. And with the clarity of 18-year-olds, I saw that there was no reason that I would go to Vietnam and slaughter people that had absolutely nothing to do with me in terms of the threat. They perhaps threaten large corporations who need to be threatened constantly. And with the clarity of an 18-year-old, I said to the military respectfully, fuck yourself, and you have nothing. You are not making me safer, you are making me less safe. And since then, hopefully, you hope with age that you get wiser. I guess I haven't, because I have not seen a war ever that did anything positive for us. The military does not keep us safer, it makes us less safe. We have around the world because of what American service people do and what the United States government does to support the war machine. We defend dictators in every country in the world against the people. We overthrow democratically elected governments. In 1986, I joined a group of interesting people, Men Stopping Rape, and I signed on, I guess, for 30 plus years, and I spoke at some conferences, and I was approached by the military to come speak to them about rape committed by United States service personnel. Rape basically is a perk for military personnel if they choose to exercise their privilege. Every military base in the country, in the world, I'm sorry, U.S. military base is surrounded by military sanctions, houses of prostitution, and coochie bars. Since the rape of indigenous children, women, children, and men is good defensible practice, no wonder confronting the rape of U.S. service women who serve is so difficult for the military. And no, George Bush, they do not envy our freedom. They hate our sexual imperialism. The United States military, it's in countries where the age of consent is lower than the United States, the military does not consider it their business. The United States government is sanctioning the fucking of children by American personnel. And if they come home and do it, it's also not the business of the American military. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Crystal Avens. I live just outside 65, whatever. I'm not going to go into my experience because I think other people have covered it, but very loud, very intense, really sharp sounds. I want to say two things about this issue. I've heard debates on, or read debates on Nextdoor about people who say the sound doesn't bother them, other people who say the sound does. We can look to the environmental impact statement to have some sort of objective measure. So then the Air Force comes along and says, oh, but that's exaggerated. But here's the thing. It's exaggerated across the board for all of the sites that have been analyzed and considered for this proposal. So it's still the case that Madison is, the people will be disproportionately affected compared to the other sites being considered. So are they still going to disregard that? Are they still going to say that the effect on people, the disproportionate effect on people, on children, on communities of color, doesn't matter? I also listened to the Common Council meeting until I accidentally hit the wrong button and it cut off at about 2 a.m. I can't believe how long those folks went on. I don't love the compromise solution, but I did hear some really important things. First of all, we're the concern for communities of color across the city. And I urge us to think about that issue on all sorts of levels. Second, the concern that, let's send it to Montgomery, that is primarily a community of color. I take those issues very seriously, so I hope we listen to that as well. If the Air Force wants to be a good neighbor, they need to turn the noise down. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathy Couture. I live about 6 houses from here. I've learned a lot in this process. I've talked to a lot of people's offices. I've coined a new phrase. It's called economic friendly fire. I think that's what we're experiencing right now, potential experiencing. I've learned about average decibels. I had no idea. I learned that the Apple Watch can track decibel rates. So on Sunday, when I heard a louder than normal airplane flying over my house, I thought, well, I'm going to check that quick. And it was around 78 decibels. Now, my house is extremely well insulated. Thank you, Operation First Start. And I have all my windows And I thought, that's going to be pleasant. I don't hear the regular airplanes when they go over. I hear the F-16s when my windows are shut. They don't bother me because they're not that loud when I'm in my well-insulated house. However, flashback 2 weeks to a Saturday morning when I'm out in my driveway pulling weeds. I know that's a little embarrassing to admit to, but I do have weeds in the driveway. And 2 F-16s took off, and I thought, I'm going to just see how long I can listen before I feel like I have to cover my ears. And it was not very long. So this is very real. I had a couple of good points and I just got distracted. I'm so sorry. This is not a patriotism issue. This is our democratic right to protect our pursuit of happiness. I've owned my home for 10 years. I've lived in Madison all my life, usually on the east side. And there's my heart. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Melinda. I am currently a Truex resident, so I definitely don't want the F-35s. I'm afraid that we'll be forced out, and if we're not forced out, it's going to be extreme effect on our health. The building I live in is a bomb shelter that was built in World War II, and I can still hear those F-16s, so I can't even imagine what the F-35s. And I'm so tired of the Elmium neighborhood and Buckeye neighborhood saying, well, why don't you move? I'm not moving. It took me 2 years to move to public housing, and I'm not moving. Go down in value. Thank you to our Colonel, Rosanne, and to Chris Taylor for supporting us.
Hi, I'm Sue. There are a number of folks around with these name tags who have been doing some work with the Safe Skies Clean Water Coalition. And I got connected to the coalition because I had been following the contamination of the well in my neighborhood. That's where the PFAS and the PFOA came from, and actually lots of other chemicals too, including probably the volatile organic compounds that we all paid a lot of money to put an air stripper on that well, which now cannot be used because of those compounds. So that's how I got connected to the issue of the F-35s. It's hard to understand how they have the money for these expensive planes, which will have nuclear capacity, and we have a nuclear free zone ordinance, and we'll have to talk about that. How they can have the money for these expensive planes, how they can have the money to dig up the contaminated soil at Truex for $40 to $60 million worth of improvements to support the F-35s, but they can't clean up our water, which they're going to pollute more. So what do? We organize. Your comments matter. I had some postcards that were already stamped with me. I think they're all gone. You have to get them postmarked by the deadline. You can say whatever you want to say to them. You can submit multiple comments. Yeah, ask. Yeah, you can submit multiple comments. Volume matters, and everything in a category matters. So please don't leave without getting connected. What you've done tonight is what we'll continue to do. You've been awesome. You've given your attention to your neighbors, to people who live in adjacent neighborhoods. We're not all going to agree about every single thing, but we can agree about protecting our community, and that's all we need. We can make friends in the process. We can increase our solidarity with each other in the process. So let's get connected, and let's also enjoy giving them some help.
Hi, my name is Ned Kidbride. I live about a block away, and I am entering my 5th year in being part of the PTA here in Hawthorne. I am speaking here, on behalf of my daughter, who is 9 and who goes to school here, and who already has classmates who cover their ears every time they're outside at recess. I'm here for her autistic friend Max, who covers his ears when he hears a fire alarm, and he's going to school here. And it matters that people know his name and the names of all the other children that are here, that are being impacted by this, who are being hurt already by the sound of war that we don't hear. I'm also here because I was really grateful to hear about this meeting. I've been to the previous 2 meetings that we had over at middle school and at Energy Center of all places, because I thought it was really important to have a meeting in a place that was actually going to be affected. You know, this is not for the people in the room, but for the people who hopefully might hear this. We can't just expect to have one meeting in one large place to try to answer these questions as a whole community, and having a plan that says how can we find one big place to have one big meeting is just flawed from the get-go and needs to be reconsidered as a basic strategy for how we try to get public comment. We need to have meetings at places like the East Madison Community Center, MATC, and other places in the neighborhoods that are being affected. The last thing I want to say, and I know I'm running out of time, is I had to sit in that meeting at Alliant Energy Center and listen to people talk about how great the people in the International Guard are, and I don't think they're wrong. But damn it, the people who live here are awesome. They are amazing people who live here. I am, doesn't mean that they don't care, doesn't mean that their children are important, doesn't mean that they don't give to this community and to our city as much as anyone else's. Damn it, they're worth fighting for too.
Hello, my name is Katie Shields, and I am a recently new homeowner in this neighborhood as of June 20th. They've taught me how to use chainsaws, given me tomato plants, mow my lawn, helping me do that. I don't want to move either. This past weekend, as one of the louder planes / jet, I don't know, flew over our house, my first instinct of my white fluffy dog was to run into the bathtub because of the noise. So as someone who hasn't even had time to hang up all the pictures in her house and paint all of her walls, it's now devastating to think before I can even replenish any of the down payment I put on this home where my future kids could go to a school district that has all gender bathrooms and fantastic neighbors, that I am starting to think about how my dogs can't have a full year in a fenced and beautiful yard and enjoy it because of the devastation of F-35. So I'm strongly against it. My husband and I will do some canvassing. We'll make phone calls. Let us know what our next steps are. We've got this.
Hi, I'm Greg Wegleitner. I have a quick question for Rommel, if that's okay. So I've heard about the high rates of afterburner use of the bases, including the longer runways. I saw that the Arizona Regional Optimization EIS originally assumed 5% afterburner use is being redone, looking at 50%, 95%. And I was wondering if you could unpack the sentence in the draft EIS we hear, because I know that often things can be written in a way that's quite misleading. And the Senate seems to be doing a lot of work. For this proposed action, the U.S. Air Force has evaluated the requirement for F-35A afterburner use during the departure of each of the 5 departing installations based on a basic training configuration, airfield elevation, runway length, and hottest temperature on record. The evaluation resulted in no requirement of afterburner use in any of the installations under consideration. There's no training requirement for F-35A pilots to utilize afterburners on takeoffs. And like a basic training configuration, in particular, Chawla. But I was wondering if you could unpack what's going on with afterburner use and that critical sentence in the draft EIS.
So the F-35, I haven't read that, but every F-35 has, every pilot and every plane has to train as they are going to fight. And they're going to have to know and practice taking off in afterburner. So that's a mission requirement. It would be ludicrous to say at your base or our base, they'll never take off in afterburner. That would mean your pilots and those planes will have no experience taking off in afterburner, and then will be able to be used in a wartime situation where they have to take off in afterburner. So every entity has to train as they are going to fight. Right? That's the mission requirement. There's a second requirement, and that is just basically avionics physics. And that's more what we're talking about. So the F-35, as it has gone through so many modifications and so many fixes, it is a technological disaster. It was an aircraft that's supposed to do 3 different things for 3 different branches of the service in one aircraft, and it can't do it. So as they're trying to fix it, they're making it heavier. And so there's a law of physics involved. And so those of us who are looking at this are anticipating that if it gets so heavy, it will have to take off an afterburner because it won't get off the ground without it. That is exactly what happened to our F-16s. I don't know about yours. They swapped an engine out, they had to put external fuel tanks on, it got so heavy, it could not get off our runway without using afterburner. So there's both a mission requirement and there could be a physical requirement that they have to take off an afterburner. That is what they were learning at Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix. And that's why they're reevaluating as they go forward whether that 5% is realistic. They know it is not realistic. They've said it. We read about it in those records. They said it's more like 60%. That's what they were saying in those emails. Hope that answers your question.
Hi there, I'm Carla Corwith, and I live outside the 65 decibel contour, but it's very loud where I live also. I can be outside with headphones on and cannot hear my music. I cannot carry on conversation either when the F-16s are flying over. Recently, my mother stayed with me during end of life. She was traumatized by these loud noises. They circle and circle when they want to. So it's children, but it's elderly. There's all of our anxiety goes up. The suicide rate's going up in this country. We do not need to be traumatized by this. The other thing with this draft EIS, I'm like, reading this, what's wrong with me? Negligible impact on housing market in the city of Madison. No significant impact to surface water, groundwater, or floodplains. Yeah, right. Impacts to safety, not significant. Emissions would not exceed threshold levels. How stupid do they think we are? Potential for hearing loss not anticipated. How stupid do they think we are? And I did write Tammy Baldwin, just to finish up here. She says that Truex is the most cost-effective location for this mission for taxpayers. I don't want my tax dollars spent this way. It's going to create stability for the air wing, which performs vital state and federal missions, the 1,650 jobs, and then of course, $4.8 billion, the estimated economic impact. We don't want our money spent this way. Thank you.
My name is Mary Leslie. I live on the north side. I have a question again about afterburners and how to make a substantive question about that whole issue. I mean, they make an assumption, they can make whatever assumption they make, but they don't have to be held to it. So how do you form a question about that? That's what I mean.
Do you guarantee?
Okay.
Guarantee.
So that's it. Okay.
My name is Andy Hyde. I live in Dartmouth, Worthington with my 6-year-old daughter. And I want to thank the folks, elected folks, the community members that are showing the resilience and the courage to oppose this kind of project. This is an any means necessary moment for our community. And we need to figure out solid, effective ways to make sure that this killing machine is not sited here. Personally, I know that we can close the base and this community would not miss those jobs and our economy would not last and especially not least, we know the F-35s are designed with the Pentagon's winnable nuclear war first strike capacity in mind. That alone places our community at great risk. We need to figure this out before it's too late. Bottom line, we can't wash the blood we shed off our children's hands. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Jim Pearson. I live on the north side of Madison the last 7 years. Just a few points. One, I am hard of hearing since birth and have tinnitus since birth and learned to manage that. I do not wish that on anyone. Having been with my beautiful wife now for 18 years, she does not wish hearing loss on anyone. Understanding the stresses that places on relationships. I appreciated the comment about understanding the effects of distress on communities and mental health. As a social worker, I'm particularly concerned about substance use in those communities as well, which also makes them more vulnerable to suicide. So I wish and hope that we send that strong message of no 35s. And one last thing, I just want to make sure that Colonel mentions the 6 points you wanted us to bring up, or that you had mentioned earlier, that we should make sure that EIS addresses. So that is to be sent out on email, or that could be mentioned. Thank you very much. Thank you.
My name is Ben Ryan. I became really interested actually in the F-16s. So I live in the flight path over in the Atwood neighborhood, and I work from home doing media projects. And I became really interested in the F-16s because, you know, they come in one right after another, which is really different than your usual commercial planes. So I started to look into it a little bit. This was about 2 years ago. And I also noticed on the 115 social media sites, everyone would always comment whenever they would say, oh, the F-16s are going to fly tonight. Everyone would comment, just as the Colonel said here, oh, the sound of freedom, I can't wait. It was just over and over and over and over and over again. And I was like, this is so weird. Like, what is this? You know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I was like, there is a coordinated effort of propaganda going on. I don't exactly know what the deal is, but this is weird. So anyway, I started going to the meetings at the airport, the Dane County Airport Noise Commission meetings. There's usually 3 or 4 people from the community at those meetings, not a lot. Mary Jo started showing up too. But I started, 115th Fighter Wing is not required to go to those. They say they're community partner, blah, blah, blah. They don't always show up, and they sit in the audience. Sometimes they will answer questions. So, one point, I'm totally concerned about noise, all that stuff, but the thing that I'm really interested in, as the Colonel talked about, is the safety. So, close to my house is a plaque, right, along Lake Monona that says, this is a fighter jet was ditched into the lake, and the pilot died to save the community. So I was at one of the Airport Noise Commission meetings, and I asked one of the Top Gun guys, okay, so, you know, one time 2 F-16s came in, and they were louder than any of the other, you know, flights that happened every day. I was like, what was the deal? He's like, well, it's probably a safety issue. So he had to escort one in. And then he slipped up and he said, usually we divert to Oak Field for safety issues. And I said, oh, really? How often does that happen? And he said, oh, I don't know. And I was like, just ballpark. Luckily there are, you know, these like airport people there and stuff, so he had to answer it. And he said, oh, once every 2 to 3 weeks. And I was like, you divert to Oak Field once every 2 weeks? I was like, can I get the records on that? You know, and he's like, oh yeah, we'll provide safety data. I did the records request, they won't, you know. So, anyway, the safety issue is a huge concern that I think no one is talking about. You don't see it in a lot of articles. I think we need to look into it more. I'm not exactly sure how to do it, but
good evening, my name is Estinor. I live near the airport, under the flight path, and I'm concerned about what happened to the biggest investment I ever made in my house. But really what I'm here is to tell you, I want to share with you 2 thoughts. One is about national security, security we're having currently is white supremacist groups. And the last time that there was a threat from outside, it was 11 Saudis, do you remember, 2001? And these Saudis are now getting a lot of support from the United States, money, F-35s that help them destroy Yemen, kill thousands and thousands of kids, and this is national security, right? Second thought, as I walked in here today, I was thinking, God, if next time it's again Tammy against one of these horrible Republicans, what am I going to do? But sitting here, I was thinking, we have Chris Taylor, right? We have Rebecca Campbell, we have Marsha, we have all kinds of people who support and stand for wrongs, people hear about them all over the state, and they can run against Tammy, who is absolutely not people that we can work for, please, Chris, please you, don't bring that poisonous chalice that they seem to give to everybody who gets into these positions, and stay with us. And yeah, we have a choice.
Hi, my name is Phyllis Casbrook. I want to make comments on three things: Mark Pocan and climate change. Mark Pocan, I heard him on the radio on WPR. It was so disappointing. He said, well, they wrote this report in bureaucraties. Normal people don't speak that way. It was like 1,000 homes would be in a place that's deemed not habitable. Who knows what that means? I don't know, like, strange. We'll have to look into that. Give me a break. You don't know what that means? It means nobody can live there. It's too loud. Okay, so I'm putting him in that category with Tammy, too. Safety, I learned a lot from the Colonel about safety. This is really, really alarming. And I live in the town of Dunn, not so close to here, but I drive into Madison all the time. One of those crashes could take me out. And I have friends who live on the east side, and I don't need them being stressed out and committing suicide. And also, it really affects everyone in the whole region. And I think the organizers shouldn't only think about having more meetings here, but in other places too, to point these things out to them. And we are all going to be affected by this. And lastly, climate change. I work for 350 Madison, so that's all I do, but I came here because this is also super important, and this is also tied up with climate change. Because, I don't know the figures, but I know it must be even worse than an airplane to take off and fly around on one of these. So, right when everybody is concentrating on what can we do to cut our carbon emissions, they send us this. This should be retired now. All these fighter planes should be retired now. So anyone who is a large planes should get on board fighting the
Hi everybody, my name is Annie Potter. I am a teacher at East High School, and I've already come to talk about the effects on our students and the low income and the disproportionate effects on low income people of color. Anyway, what I'm here to talk to you about right now is an argument that I would make to my parents who are very conservative, both of them. And what I want to say is this: shame on the Chamber of Commerce for being so short-sighted. Businesses, do you think that low-tech businesses, do you think any business is going to want to come and locate on the east side, anywhere close to this noise? Do you think that a business like Epic would ever want to relocate to a place like East Madison after the noise comes around? Exact Sciences, these are businesses that help people. These are businesses that produce something that's positive to help people's health, not you know what I mean. In any case, how short-sighted can we be to scare these businesses away before they even come? What we gain in dollars does not go to people who live on the east side of Madison. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I swear I heard at the Alliant Energy presentation that the union of construction workers that were supporting this were from Sun Prairie. Did anyone else hear that?
Yeah.
They're from Sun Prairie. So, anyway, we want to support business in Madison. This is not the way to do it.
So what we need is action. We gotta act. We know that we don't want this. So immediately, you all, we need to get as many comments as possible to the Air Force. That's really what we need to do. And on the Clean Skies, Safe Skies, Clean Water, WI website, there's all kinds of ways you can get those comments in. You can do it by email, you can do it by going on their website. You can call it in, actually, if you'd like. You know, you can email it, you can write it in, but we have to get these comments in by Friday. So, have a little party this Friday. Now, I am calling for an extension. I will tell you. That is, that was going out, I said it today in the press release, because the people impacted not had an opportunity to really weigh in. This is, what they want to do is, you know, sneak this in really quick. But we think there's some real problems with they didn't follow the process that they're supposed to follow in reaching out to impacted, disproportionately impacted communities. So I'm going to call for an extension. I'm also going to call for a revised environmental impact statement, because this doesn't have a lot of things. I mean, this is bad enough, don't get me wrong. I'm no reading this. But it does have things like, what's the decibel when these planes take off the land? They had that in the Vermont study. They had a lot of other things in the Vermont study that we don't have in our study. So those are things we have to know. But assuming they're not giving us an extension on the drive, we've got to get these comments in. So please, the focus this week really has to be, you submit your comments. Your children submit their comments. Everyone you know submit comments. Have people over to your house with postcards. I mean, maybe we can get something together at some coffee shop where we can all go on one night this week and just write our postcards and bring people. But that's really, really critical, because it does matter. The kernel is here as a living body, that it does make a difference. And so this is our shot. We only have till Friday. So we know what we don't want. Let's tell them what we want, right? Let's tell them what we want and what we need in our community. And right now we do not want these jets. So please get your comments in, all right? It's really, really, really important. And then sign up. There's a sign-up sheet. This is really critical because the coalition wants to get your emails so when we do actions, we can communicate with you all. And there will be many more actions coming up. So thank you all for being part of such an incredibly unique, wonderful community. Let's speak out, let's act out, and let's stop these F-35s. Thank you.